Ji Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Today I am going to talk about culture, a very important topic, one of the most topic that is my favorite, and I really want to talk about culture most of the time. The culture is a set of learned behavior. It is not something that is genetically transferred. So culture is always learned. It's basically culture is learned through social interaction. So it is what we learn from society, what we learn from family, what we learn from our peers. That is culture. And if we talk about definition of a culture, so different books have different definitions of the culture. Let me read one definition. It's an integrated system of learned behavior, patterns which are characteristics of a member of a society, which are not result of biological inheritance and not genetically determined. It is wholly result of social interaction, is transmitted and maintained solely through the communication and learning. So this is very important, and culture is not just only language, dress. It is encompasses every aspect of the life, your day-to-day routine, your habits, your interaction with people, your values, your beliefs, how you behave. So culture is very important, and different cultures, different societies have different cultures, and people follow those cultures. And when we talk about culture, again there are two major two components which are very important. One is the materialistic culture, and another is the non-materialistic culture. Materialistic culture includes all the things which have physical identity, which has physical entity, in fact, like buildings, like art, like dresses, like clothes. So these are part of the physical materialistic culture. And when we talk about the non-materialistic culture, we talk about values, we talk about beliefs, we talk about traditions, and that encompasses the non-materialistic culture. Similarly, there is a local culture where culture within a certain boundary, people follow that culture. That is a local culture. And then we have other, which is a popular culture, which is culture of the masses. Or you can say, as a result of globalization, the popular culture, that is the one that people follow, or the trend setting can come under the popular culture. But local culture is the one that a special group of people follow the culture. And in fact, initially there was a term which was used as folk culture to determine or to explain the culture of a local of a people. But now we use a term local culture, which encompasses broad meaning and which encompasses more area, so that we say a local culture of the people of an area or in a place. Or folk culture, we can say it folk culture, but folk culture is more of a traditional kind of culture that we used to say. And then we are having we still have some places where the folk culture is being practiced. For example, if we talk about people of Kailash, so the Kailashi people, they have their own folk culture and traditions, and they have preserved their culture. So people go there and they go and learn about their culture. But the people of Kailash, they have preserved their culture, and they have their festivals like Chilam Joshi festival, which they celebrate, and people from all across Pakistan, they go and visit and see about this festival in the Kailash Valley. So this is important aspect about the culture I told you about. So there are different cultures which are preserved. And then if we talk about diffusion, so the culture diffuses again, and the diffusion have two major forms. One is the contagious diffusion, which means it affects everyone, and everyone is affected contagiously, like a disease. A disease spreads contagiously, like in terms of COVID, we can say it is a contagious disease. Similarly, many cultural trends, many cultural values, norms, they follow, or they move, or they diffuse in a contagious way, spreading in the masses. And then we have hierarchical diffusion, which doesn't affect everyone, which in fact diffuses in a hierarchy, in a segment, in a segments of society, in a stratas of society. So that is known as hierarchical diffusion, and it again depends. For example, contagious diffusion, very good example is mobile phones. Very good example is social media. It has affected everyone. Everyone have been affected. Now, if we talk about the certain trends or certain fashion trends, so those are normally we see hierarchical trends. They are initially certain strata or certain segment of society adopt a certain trend, and then it spreads to the masses. So initially it comes to a certain you can say a certain segment of society or set of society adopts a certain trend. So that is definition or the example of a hierarchical diffusion. And what a couple of other things within the diffusion, if we talk about the very important term is culture appropriation. So sometimes when the popular culture spreads, the very important thing is culture appropriation. You have to see what is appropriate to your culture and what is not appropriate to your culture. For example, blindly following Western traditions or Western culture, many of the things are not appropriate to our culture. For example, let me share the incident, very recent incident that occurred in one of the universities, in which one of the students proposed another student. So that was not culturally appropriate to our culture. It is not something which is normal in our culture. So therefore, the university administration had to take serious actions against those students, and they basically removed those students from the university, because the university does have certain norms. There's no, again, nobody is saying that you should not have affection or you should not show love, but the thing is that it is not normally acceptable in universities to do that. There are other places you can do that, but it's not a university. Universities have their own, you can say, area, or the universities have its own jurisdiction. So on the campus, there are certain rules that you have to follow. Again, it was not appropriate to the culture of the Pakistan. Having said this, so these are a couple of things which are very important, and we have to see how it goes. Then a very important aspect is the language. The culture and language are very, very important, integral part of each other, part and parcel of each other. So if the culture prevails, the language prevails. And if unfortunately the culture doesn't prevail, the language also diminishes. And now we can see many of the old cultures that are not present, and so their languages are not present in the world, and you don't see people speaking the native languages because the native culture doesn't remain. For example, there are many words that are related with the culture. For example, if in terms of if I talk about Punjabi culture, for example, so we used a word, if the food is very delicious, so there's a word which is used for that, is chas aa gayi. So now this chas aa gayi is a pure Punjabi word depicting which is used depicting the culture of Punjab. Similarly, a word which is used in Punjab, and that is papu. For example, if someone is looking good, but if you go to Balochistan, it has, or go to KPK, it has a totally different meaning. So the language have a meaning according to the culture. So the language have a meaning according to the culture. So therefore, language and culture are part and parcel, very, very important. And the same word have a different meaning in one culture, and it has a totally different meaning in another culture. Similarly, like gestures, I always try to avoid students. I always ask students not to use gestures, because gestures have a different meaning in different cultures. For example, very simple, this sign and this sign, it does have two different meanings in two different cultures. Okay. Similarly, wearing a cap have a different meaning in different cultures, especially the way how you wear the cap. So these are again these symbols, the language, they are also embedded with the culture. And if we talk about Pakistan, we have 5 provinces, we have the cultures of 5 provinces, and we have a diversity in culture, in food, in traditions, and that is very, very beautiful part of about Pakistani culture, if we say. And here's a term which I would like to inculcate as here as well: assimilation of the cultures. When basically the local group adopts the popular culture, when the local culture is basically dominated by a popular culture, or when the cultures assimilate. So we have a Pakistani culture, wearing a shalwar kameez is Pakistani culture, and if we go to different provinces of Pakistan, within those provinces are differences. So you can see now I am wearing a Chitrali cap, or people in Hunza, they wear this kind of cap. If you go to Sindh, they will be wearing Sindhi cap. Similarly, people in Balochistan, they are wearing Bukti Shalwar. So these are their local examples that we can quote from the local dresses that we can quote from the different areas of Pakistan. Similarly goes with the food as well. So depending on the area, for example, in people in Pakistan, in Punjab, because of the hot weather, the traditional traditional drink is lassi. And if we go to the KPK, the traditional drink is kava. So that is something that again is depending on the climate. So climate has also a very important role to play with the culture. The cultural norms, the values, the traditions, the dresses, they are of the building structure, the architecture has a lot to play with the weather as well. So the culture and climate also are very, very important. And they go side by side. For example, then there are national things that we have that are famous in Pakistan. For example, national sweet of Pakistan is gulab jamun. Okay, again very popular, but again if you go to certain provinces, you might be surprised that people might have their own traditional sweet over there. So there is the culture of a country, and then within the country there are a culture of the different provinces. But as whole and holistic, we see the culture of a country. We talk about the culture of and that is what when we talk about assimilation, so it is assimilated in a Pakistani culture. Broadly speaking, all the provinces have their own different cultures, but they are assimilated to make a Pakistani culture. And now, because of the globalization, people are aware the world has become a globalized village. So now we are very much familiar with other cultures, and every culture does have an impact on our culture. There is a definition, there is a term that is normally used, which is known as ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism means when someone considers his or her culture superior to other culture. Ethnocentrism means when you consider your culture superior to other cultures, which should not be. Every culture has its own values, tradition, and every culture should be respected. And I always try to enforce this to my students that yes, Pakistan is blessed with different cultures, and try to respect the people and their culture and the values. All provinces have different cultures or different norms even. For example, they have different norms. If you go to KPK, the norms are different in KPK. While if you go to Punjab, the norms are different. And if you go to Balochistan, again the tradition and the norms are totally different. So we need to respect those. We need to respect them, respect these things. With the globalization, now the people are affected. Now the people are familiar with the trends in the global economy and in the global market. Now some of these trends are very good, and some of these trends which are not very good. For example, now we see from a couple of years in Pakistan having Black Friday sales. Again, this is something which is not appropriate to our culture, not part of our culture. But due to globalization, due to global village, we see these kind of trends coming to Pakistan, and we should be aware of it. Similarly, the fashion that comes from the West, again, many of the you can say the trends that comes from the West, so we should be aware of it. We should be aware of the trends which are appropriate to our culture, which are in you can say which are in relation to our culture and not deviant to our culture. So very important term, deviance. Deviance is something which is not part of the culture, which is something which is foreign to the culture, which is something different from the culture. So this is the term which is being used. So there are many things which are deviant to the culture, and we should be aware of that. So this was a little bit about the culture. The culture is very important, and I always urge students to follow their culture, respect their culture, respect the cultures of different people, and be proud of your culture. What the culture that you have, you should be proud of your culture. You should always promote your culture, but at the same time respect the other people's opinion, respect difference of opinion, respect other values, other norms. At the same time, follow your culture, and be proud of your culture. One thing which again is a very strong statement that I'm going to say in terms of Pakistani culture, if we talk about that, if you go to any other province, the people, they speak their language, and they speak their language proudly. Sindhis speak their language, people in Balochistan, people in KPK speak. But if you talk about Punjabis, although Punjabis consider themselves superior, but very few or very often or very less you see Punjabis speaking Punjabi. They don't speak their language. I don't know why they don't speak their language, but they should speak their language. So you should be proud of speaking your language. You should be proud to celebrate your culture. Culture days, very good. Do celebrate your culture days. Express your culture and respect the cultures of different people. So very important thing again, lastly, concluding marks, if you are comfortable with your culture, if you follow your culture, and if you respect your culture, you respect other culture as well. You are comfortable with other culture as well. So as Pakistanis, I always give this message that proud of your culture and proud of being Pakistani. Long live Pakistan. Thank you.